everyone, I'm back with another X-Men Marvel Legends review as I take a look at the entire wave from this Holocaust Build-A-Figure series. Part of the fun of this wave for me is the fact that it is so eclectic, that there's so many different characters from different eras of the comic books, and that is really nice and makes it quite fresh, I think. But today, we're going to be taking a look at the X Factor Cyclops. And before we get into the review proper, I did think it's important to highlight the fact that we have had a variant of this figure previously in the Marvel Legends line. In fact, we got it from an X-Men retro carded themed wave where we have Cyclops in his blue and white costume. Now, I've got to be honest with you, that's actually my preferred colouring for this version of the costume. I've never been quite as keen on the blue and yellow, although I won't let that hurt my review. But as you can see here, we have had basically this figure before, but with a few small differences, most noticeably in that head sculpt on the figure. In the packaging there, we can see that that version of the figure actually has a little bit of that drift coming from the visor, which is pretty cool. We won't see that in today's video, but I just want to acknowledge that up front, and then we can move on with this packaging. Now, if you saw my previous Wolverine video from yesterday, then you will know that there's not really an awful lot to write home about when it comes to this packaging. It is pretty much identical from the front, except we have Cyclops in the packaging rather than Wolverine. It is the new chunky style packaging. I really like this thick card that they use. This feels a lot more robust than what we've had in previous years. From the front, it's not the most exciting. We do have the window display where we can see the figure, and that looks really cool. Behind him is a bit of a yellow montage, but it's not that exciting. It's not images from comic books or anything like that. But it is yellow, so it helps the figure pop in the packaging, which is really nice. And then the rest of it is just basically black borders. We do have a really nice X-Men logo at the bottom there, which is really front and center, which is cool. But other than that, not too much to say. What I do think is really cool, though, is the side panel. I really love how they've given this space over to the artwork, taken directly from the comic books, which looks glorious. And then if we stack them up with the other figures in this particular wave, we can see how colourful and fun and unique and different these look. And of course, they're a consistent size, so they fit nice and snugly on your shelf and look really great, don't they? So yeah, I'm a big fan of this approach. Then finally, if we flip the packaging and look at the reverse, we have another image, again, taken from the source material, which looks really cool in the top right-hand corner there. A little bit bio, all the other figures in the wave, and then a fair amount of small print. Now, I'll be completely honest with you, because I already have this figure in my collection as that variant, I wasn't expecting an awful lot from this figure, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised by it, even though I don't like the yellow and blue approach. And if we take a look at this head sculpt, we can see what looks to be a brand new head sculpt for Cyclops. Now, we've had a few Cyclops figures across the years, so someone might be able to contradict me on that, but I don't immediately recognize this one with a slight smirk going on, which is pretty cool. And as I said, this is definitely different to what we got the last time around in terms of that X Factor variant, so that is appreciated. All in all, there's not too many details to draw out here. There's no washes or anything like that, which is a real shame. All the colours are very bright primary colours, which, you know, works very well in an action figure. A shame that we're not getting any more detailing, though, when it comes to washes and things like that, and that is a fact that remains true throughout the rest of the figure. We've seen this body mold used many times. I happen to really like it. Actually, I think it's highly effective, and I don't mind it being recycled here, but I did want to point out that this is not original. There's really very little on this figure that is new to this version of the figure. And what you might notice is that there is a little bit of smudging around some of the paint, particularly on the X, I suppose, that's being formed on his chest there. I cannot help but notice there's a little bit of smudge in there, which is a bit disappointing. Another clue that this has been recycled, of course, is the fact that there is a peg hole in the back of the figure there, which is a little bit distracting, I gotta be honest. But to be fair, you could utilize this if you have a display stand that will screw into the back there and allow him to be in some high kick poses or something, I suppose. And then when it comes to the arms and the hands, yeah, all of this is just painted in, all the details painted in. Nothing is sculpted in because, of course, they're just recycling all of these bits and pieces. And we can see the same again when it comes to the boots there. Pretty standard matte plastic that's been utilized here. No washes, no extra detail, just basically what you see is what you get. So articulation wise, well, there is a ball joint at the top of the neck that will allow the head to rotate all the way around. Not really much in the way of give when it comes to wobbling left and right though, but there is a huge range of motion to look up and down, really important for a character like Cyclops. Now he's got ball joints in the shoulders, of course he's got the butterfly wing joint, which I'm a huge fan of and really sells this figure in my opinion. He's got the complementary bicep swivel, the double pin at the elbow, and he's got the standard pin swivel at the wrist, so that hand can rotate all the way around, and of course hinge forwards and backwards. Then he's got the standard swivel at the waist, so of course he can rotate all the way around, and he's got the ab crunch there as well, which will allow him to bend forwards and backwards a really good healthy distance, which is fantastic. He's got ball joints in the hips, the legs will kick out to the side, there's the complementary thigh swivel, and there's also a swivel at the top of the boot cut there as well. The legs, of course, will kick forwards, they'll go backwards a little bit, and there's another double pin this time at the knee. So, of course, that lower leg will kick all the way back there. And then finally, we have the ankle pivot, allowing the foot to hinge forwards and backwards and rotate from side to side. In terms of accessories, he comes with an additional pair of hands, an alternate head, and some optic blast effects. I have to say, I really like this alternate head. I think they've done a really good job here. I think this is a brand new sculpt with that open mouth. And I have to say, the detailing here is fantastic. Like the colours of the tongue there, the pink and the pink around the lips and then the teeth. Really, really well done. Surprisingly effective, I think, here. You will notice that the visor, of course, actually is an open space, and that is because we can put the blast effects in there. We have seen this before on previous releases, including the one I showed earlier, so nothing new there. But what is very cool is that at the end of the optic blast is actually an opportunity here to put this end piece. I don't think we've seen that before, so I think that's a new variant, which is very, very cool and very effective. It actually has a, well, I suppose a blast end effect to this, so you could put this up against another figure like Juggernaut, for example, and show it bouncing off him, or just on display like this. But either way, it's very, very cool. The only criticism I would have here, or really it's a point of caution, I suppose, is that you've got to balance this figure very, very carefully, because of course, he's going to be a little bit unbalanced here by the weight of that end piece, so there is a tendency to want to topple unless he's very carefully positioned. So wrapping up, I'm going to give this figure 3 stars. This is not a bad figure. I was actually pleasantly surprised by this one. I had fairly low expectations, if I'm completely honest with you, knowing that a large part of this was just being recycled, and to be fair, for the most part, that is exactly what it is. And those recycled elements, it's a really nice figure. I can't really fault it. The articulation is absolutely fantastic, so why not? I think where some of my gripes come in with it, though, is around the paint taps. Once again, we're not seeing any washes. That's not unusual these days for Marvel Legends, which is a shame, but a sad fact, I suppose. But where I do take issue, though, is around the fact that none of this detail is actually sculpted in, and where we see the paint, it's a little bit smudgy in places, which, I expect better from Hasbro in this department. That being said, though, I do really appreciate what looks to be like new head sculpts. Now, again, you could correct me in the comments, but I think these are brand new, and I do really like that we've got something new there. Also, in terms of the optic blast, I think it's really cool that we're getting that end piece. Again, I think that's new, but certainly new to my collection, let's put it that way, and I do appreciate that. I think that's really very cool. So all in all, a perfectly serviceable figure, a nice one to add to the collection if you don't have a version like this of Cyclops in your collection, but I suspect a lot of people are going to end up picking this up because they want that Build-A-Figure piece, which always makes me feel slightly cautious, as I feel like it's a little bit of a marketing ploy, and perhaps that's why they haven't put as much effort into the paint taps on this version of the figure, but I could be wrong on that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.